Hey everybody, good evening. I've got my very full glass of wine from a day with all three kiddos. My name is Jenny Best. I'm the founder of Solid Starts, and I'm really excited because I feel like I have a little guilty pleasure night tonight, which is that we are going to be sharing this space with Alexis, the founder of Not Safe for Moms group. And I found this group quite by accident, as I feel like so many of these so many of these relationships are formed. And it just really struck a chord with me. It's pretty raw, it's pretty direct, and really bold. But it was just such a refreshing experience compared to all the perfect little squares that we, I think, too often see painting a picture of motherhood, right? So this is my motherhood. It's as good as it's going to get on a Wednesday, Thursday night, whatever it is. And so let's see. I'm going to see if Alexis is here, and we'll patch her in and we'll get started. We won't be answering questions about feeding so much tonight, but happy to take questions about motherhood, stresses in that, all of that good stuff. So I don't think Alexis is here yet. So let's see. Alexis, if you can hear me, go ahead and just press the request to join button. Maybe I can just patch you in right here. Hold on. Let's see. Hang on, guys. Here we go. Alexis, I'm patching you in. Alexis said this was her first time. Yeah, we see you. There you are.
I did it.
What a fitting little analogy for this. I'm taking your virginity for Instagram Live for the first time.
You would think I've never been on Instagram before. I was like, how do we do that?
I know it's a little unnerving the first time. I mean, I don't do very many of them, but I've done a few now. But it's kind of strange because it's only been like a couple of months, and now there's reels and all this other new stuff to learn and to master.
I have not gone into real
once you
territory
get comfortable, the world will just change on you again. Everybody meet Alexis, the founder of Not Safe for Moms group. I am so excited to talk to you, Alexis. I have my wine here. I'm like kicking back. This is like, I'm not talking about baby feeding tonight, hopefully.
Nope.
Baby. I am really sort of stunned and impressed with what you've done over there. And I have to say, I don't even remember how I found you, but for everyone who's watching, the picture that I posted a couple weeks ago of the woman screaming, it went as viral can be for us. And when I went back to look at our analytics, Alexis, and that picture is from your page, and it was our most popular post in all of time. And this is a baby account. This is a baby feeding account. And here, this picture, I mean, it provoked some pretty strong responses from a lot of people, particularly because I worded it in a provocative way. But, it just goes to show you how much angst there is. Latent angst, overt angst, like just all around angst. And for whatever moment, it was like COVID moment or like, just kind of tapping the moment of the time, it spoke to a lot of people. So thank you for doing what you're doing. I'm really excited to get to know you and to hear more about how you manage all of that, because it's got to be intense. Yeah, I mean, I just feel like, can we just start there? Like, we can do your whole life story in a second, but like, while we're on the topic, so you are posting some really provocative stuff. And I'm pretty, I'm a New Yorker. I can kind of handle, racy, pictures and provocative wording and all of that, but you're like going right there. But it's from this like community approach where, from what I can tell, it's like anonymous submissions from mothers, and then you're reposting without their name. So how, first of all, do you get is it just like a completely supportive environment, or are you flooded with criticism all day long? So I kind of want to know, it's provocative stuff. It's going to provoke,
Right.
right?
You know, it's amazing. It's I would say like 95% of the time, it's a really supportive community.
Nice.
It would, I'd say the most polarizing one might get would maybe, the most polarizing we got was around the Black Lives Matter movement.
Yeah.
And I mean, it wasn't about motherhood, but of course it is. But when we were
Sure.
talking about police families and protesting, and that was very divisive. But when it comes to um, termination after already having children, gender, you know, when you're disappointed about the gender of your baby, wanting to leave your partner and explore other relationships. I mean, the kind of empathy that this community expresses for one another is really astounding. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it's I don't know. There's something very special about the people who come here or who make the effort to write in. It's
Mm-hmm.
not that much of an effort, but I guess you have to opt into writing us something. And
Yeah.
I think that when you invite mothers to be able to say what they want to say without the consequence of, I guess, their name being attached, they they're really, you know, we support one another. We want to
Yeah.
be there for one another. We know that this is the village we have, and it's
Yeah.
an electronic one right now. But I
Right.
think we're
Right.
yearning to connect to one another in a major way.
Yeah. I mean, I felt very strongly when I landed on your site that that you were saying all the things that I was afraid to say. And of course, like certain posts resonate more than others, for sure. We all have our, sort of issues and dynamics in our marriage or other things, but I was just sort of stunned by the courage in that. And I have to share with you that just yesterday I had posted like a survey for feedback on like how we're doing, what do you want more of, what do you want less of, and this or that. And one of the followers was like, "Oh wait, don't share what I said with what I wrote to you because I just realized my mother-in-law is also following."
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And there's like that whole dynamic too, especially in
Yeah.
the feeding when you have the maternal presence of how it used to be before and all of that kind of pressure. So, okay, so you live in New York. Like, tell me your story. How did you start this? And can I just ask, like, all of this, like, could be through so many different lenses. It could be
Hmm.
through postpartum depression. It could be through marriage, this
Hmm.
intensity. Like, in a lot of ways, all the different pictures, like they could mean different things, kind of like what I
Hmm.
posted earlier today, like this beautiful picture image that you posted
Hmm.
around ectopic pregnancy, but I was using it as a different kind of loss or anxiety or
Hmm.
stress kind of a
Hmm.
feeling. And it's so well done, but I have to ask you, and I want to hear your life story, but I have to ask you, how does your husband feel all about this? Because like there could be like one could read into this like it's very feminist, it's very, like I'm not sure. Like I want to know, like, is he fully in support? Do you feel like you can talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I guess I can kind of answer a little bit of the life story part when I'm answering your question. And by the way, I love your energy. And I don't usually talk about energy, but
Wait,
like
sorry, it's more of
you're
a like ADD, like all over
I,
the place, and plus a sip of wine. So.
I am so bone tired right now. Like every part of me is like in pain, and you're just like,
Oh.
blah! But it's
I
like
think I'm
feeding
just
me.
like
So
whatever it is beyond tired. It's like that other end of wired. It's
you've
definitely
passed the
not
point of
well
no
rested
return.
energy. Exactly.
um, I'm a writer, and I really love confessional writing and writing in personal narrative. And when my husband met me, I was doing kind of like the Moth type storytelling series on stage in the East Village. And I had produced a show that was like me and a bunch of other writers and comedians and some dirty folk rock singers. and we would tell our like really raw and dirty dating stories in and around New York. And it was, you know, it was as open and honest as you can imagine. It would be, you know, dating in your 20s and really just not having a great time of it. But by the time I met my now husband, like we were just starting to date, and I was like, hey, come to my show. And then as I'm up there, I was just describing like a sexual exploit. And I was like, maybe you shouldn't have come to this show. So I think he kind of knew what he was getting into from the beginning. But, you know, as our relationship, of course, evolved and as my writing continued to be personal, I've had to be careful with the kinds of things that I disclose. So I think that this is the most comfortable he's been, because instead of constantly telling my story, I'm sharing other people's stories. So, you know, this isn't really the Alexis show as much as it's a community story. And I like that, because I feel like I've told my story so many times. And while I do try to insert a little bit of myself here and there, I really am more curious about what other people are going through.
Yeah. Yeah, and it changes with each generation, but it also doesn't, right? I mean, I'm finding that the assumptions I have of mothers today. So I'm 42, and my last two babies were at the same time at age 41, 40, no 40.
What time is it?
But I don't even know. I mean, I'm not even sure I'm 42 at this point. Maybe I'm older. But I have found that my assumptions of what moms are thinking today are not always on the mark. Though some of what I express in motherhood, I find people really relate to, and they appreciate that. But as somewhat of a sort of motherhood anthropologist now that you are, how do you think motherhood has changed since like the 1950s? Like, I love that post you guys did with maybe it was a 60s post, that woman in like the pink mink jacket blowing bubbles outside, totally looking like I just want a cigarette and a martini.
Yeah, over it.
But yeah, I'm curious for your thoughts on how you feel motherhood is changing or not, or has changed or not since then.
I feel like my internet connection's really bad. Yeah, I think let me just check my.
Yeah, sure. Do what you need to do.
If I disconnect, will you reconnect with me?
We can restart.
Okay.
We can restart.
Yeah.
It's not great, but we can do it.
I really hope it. It's
better than being blurry for the next 20 minutes.
If I swipe up, will it take me out of here, or will I still be
Honestly, you're clear right now.
Oh yeah,
so
okay.
Give it 2 more shots and then.
All right, yeah, let's give it. How has motherhood changed? Right now, I feel like we have gone so backwards. Especially since the pandemic, because the types of dynamics that are playing out in a lot of households across the US really feel familiar to the types of issues that I think that couples were dealing with. I don't want to say in the 50s, but I think not too long ago, where women had to choose, right, between career or family, identity or motherhood as an identity. And as this pandemic has evolved, the stories that I've been hearing from women are so much about this struggle of choice, and in a lot of these relationships where the partner is the primary breadwinner, even though the woman may also have just as powerful a position and just as great a career, it's usually the mental load is falling on her shoulders, and the impetus to take care of children is falling on her, whether she's, being told that's what her role is or just a self-appointed feeling. And, we see that reflected in the news in that so many women are dropping out of the workforce, it's not because they're necessarily lower wage earners. It's because I just don't think that we've shifted as much as we could have, or as much as we've hoped, in the roles of parenting. And that's been a very disenchanting realization for a lot of us.
Yeah.
Have you seen that in your community at all?
I'm nodding my head. I'm seeing it here in my home.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's not necessarily, it's part relationship dynamic, and I'm pretty open about that with Mike, but it's also part structural, right? Like all these jobs of people who are in stage 3, of which my husband was part of stage 3 because he works at a university, suddenly just went back to work and required everyone to work from the office. And I had 2 days notice about that.
Oh, wow.
And no childcare. And I have a full-time job outside of Solid Starts. And Solid Starts is also a full-time job and becoming my primary full-time job. So, I mean, I've been working 4 a.m. to 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. to bedtime every day since March 11th, right? Now I'm in a very privileged position. I have a lot of choices. I have possibilities, you know, but that dynamic, I can't even imagine in another house, you know. It's I completely understand what you're saying. It's like everyone has these gradations of not good right now, but it's teasing out everything that was already there.
Right. It's not like a seismic shift.
No. So why do you think it is that, I'm trying to think. So you posted recently about, it was the New York Times parenting page just posted.
Oh, me or the New York Times, yes.
Well, yes, you have the same quality content. It was, a woman's, a caricature of a woman Zooming while breastfeeding. And it was this conversation that basically, you know, we're reverting back. We're taking steps backwards with this. But what I can't quite wrap my head around is, like, what do we do about that? Other than just be angry.
Yeah.
Because I've been through the anger, like, all the way around and back again. And I don't know. I mean, I guess it's an advocacy solution, but what, like, where is your head in terms of action?
I don't know yet. I mean, I'm still in the trying to get the conversation started part of things. And I feel like that's my role. And first, you know, being able to talk about it is hard. And a lot of people haven't even had these conversations. So if we're not willing to have the conversations in our own homes, then how?
Children bring them in. We love flybys.
Okay, all right. You want to say hi?
Especially little ones.
Hello. All right, a little one, a small one wants to say hi.
Oh, look at that hair. It's okay. Don't worry.
When the other person tries to put children to bed,
don't worry at all.
So so a lot of people are.
Speaking of,
it's like, mommy's not putting you to bed tonight. It's a special night. Hi, Gigi. So, you know, I think that if people aren't having these conversations in their own homes, then how are we going to have them in workplaces? And I mean, it's even, and people have even written into me about, like, how do I even start this conversation with my boss about a flexible work schedule, a work schedule that takes into account that I'm a mother in the middle of a pandemic, that, you know, I'm not going to be sending my kid to school or to daycare because every time I bring it up, I get shot down. And I put that out to my community, and I said, does anyone have any ideas about how to start a conversation with a company or a boss that doesn't really seem to be amenable to it? And it was kind of like crickets. So I think that we're
Because there's
not
a
quite
power dynamic there.
there.
And you're not in a position to lose your job and all of that. I mean, this really gets me. When employers started sort of calling people back before schools were open and before daycares were open, I went like through the roof, because sure, that works for most of the men in the households or the partners who are the not taking, the caretakers, but it really does not work for women. And you're literally asking them to choose their job over children. It's not just like a slight choice, it's like the choice.
Yeah.
And I maybe at this point all we can do is just shout loudly from platforms that have a following and that have a little bit of power and a little bit of persuasion. And maybe the solution there is like partnering up with some really highly followed accounts that can spread your message more powerfully and more loudly. But my God, it's almost it feels criminal to me that employers are asking women to go back to work physically in the office. Like, I get work from home full time. I get it. But to ask them to go back to work when daycares and public schools are not allowed to be open is ridiculous. It gets me so riled up.
Like, what are you actually supposed to do with this child?
And what kind of company are you? What kind of company? Like, what if you're a single mom? I have no words for the amount of anger that I feel for it, and I don't know how to process it because I don't know how to funnel it in the most productive way. But I feel like you have nailed that really well.
It's not even just children. I mean, there are people who are taking care of elderly parents and people who have been sick through this pandemic, and people who are chronically ill, and and they don't have anyone else to take care of them. This affects everybody who is in a caregiving position. And I just think that there's a real lack of perspective from these companies that are not taking that view, that we have people who need to take care of people, and it's not just about bringing bodies into also an enclosed space, which is a stupid idea.
Right. I'd be curious to see like what Patagonia is doing, the company, because they tend to have some really progressive policies around that. I should look that up and share that. Okay, so let's talk about you a little bit. So you had postpartum depression, is that right?
Yes. Yeah. And
are you comfortable talking about that a little bit?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, yes.
I've never experienced it. Full disclosure, in my 3 pregnancies, I lost one, but it's. I mean, that was a depression of a different order for sure. But I don't know necessarily even how to relate to it because I don't know what it feels like. So I'm always very curious to learn, because what I do know is that it's a very real thing, and it's not just like the baby blues or whatever, people say about that. So I'd love for you to share a little bit about that if you're comfortable.
Yeah. And firstly, I'll say that I have dealt with depression on and off throughout my life, and this was different. Like, I didn't recognize it for what it was. I had no idea because I didn't know what to expect from motherhood, so I just thought that crying every day was par for the course. And it happened immediately for me. It happened the day I gave birth. The day I had a wonderful pregnancy. I was so happy. I was ecstatic. I think I had all the good hormones happening. And I loved being pregnant. I was living, actually, I'm in the house that I was living at when I was pregnant. I was in my husband's grandmother's house by the beach. And I was living here for like 6 months, and we just moved back here today. And I was like biking every day and looking at the water, imagining what my firstborn would be like. And then the day of my birth, I ended up having an emergency C-section. And that did not go according to plan at all. And everything from there on just felt completely out of my control, which I think can lead to a lot of issues. And it just felt very cold and unsupported, the environment in general. And the next day, I remember walking around like trying to take my first steps. I was just like, why am I in a black hole? I felt like I was in a deep black hole, and I was describing it to a doctor friend who was visiting me. And I said, did you feel this way? And she's like, yeah, I think that's just how it is. Because she too had experienced postpartum depression, but she didn't know that she had had it. And it was a year later for her. And we reflected on this, a couple of years ago. And she's like, yeah, I had no idea that's what it was. This is almost 9 years ago, because it still wasn't really part of what people were talking about. It still, I think it was like a Brooke Shields thing. It's amazing how much the dialogue has changed, thank God. And so for weeks, I just was curled up in a ball, and I had some family come and visit, and anybody who was willing, bless you, anyone who was willing to visit, I'd be like, anyone who was willing to visit, I'd be like, here, take him, here, take him, here, take him. I wanted nothing to do with my baby. And I was reading all these books. I had always been like a very good student, and all the books said, well, if you do X, Y, and Z, he should sleep. And I'd be like, why isn't he sleeping? He's not doing the thing in the book. And I highlighted, I put the Post-it down, and he's not nursing on my breast for a full 20 minutes. I'm not getting a full feed. I felt like I was doing everything wrong. And then I wasn't sleeping because he was up every 40 minutes. And, that doesn't help either. So it was maybe 2 months in, and I was at a checkup with my OBGYN, and she looked at me and she said, your light went out. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, you're usually like bright. You're usually like shining, like from the inside. You're like Alexis. You're like fun. And it's not there. You're gone. Where'd you go? And she started asking me these questions. It's like she had a checklist, and she's like, do you ever feel like maybe this was not a great idea? Like maybe you're having second thoughts about having had a child? I was like, yes. She's like, do you ever have thoughts that maybe your baby is trying to hurt you? I was like, how'd you know? And I had legitimately thought that my baby was planning my slow and painful death.
Wow.
And that is one of those thoughts,
markers.
Those intrusive thoughts that, can come. I mean, I thought that he was evil. And, looking back at it now, like, I can laugh and be like, isn't that crazy? But like, but what a comfort it was.
And thank you for saying that right now, because that's not an easy thing to say out loud to a group of moms watching.
I forget that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I forget that the things that are easy for me to say, because I am a storyteller and I'm used to telling my story, are really hard. Yeah. And so I do want to thank you for pausing, because for those moms who are listening that might be going through this, it's not, I shouldn't be running through it like blah, 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 blah. This is all heavy. And when I was going through it, it was the bleakest time in my life. And
how long did it last?
It was probably, a solid 2.5 months before I felt relief, because then I had to like fight to be able to see a psychiatrist. My husband wasn't comfortable with the idea of me breastfeeding and going on Zoloft. And that was difficult. I brought him to the doctor with me, and she was like, your wife is not going to make it if you don't do this, if you guys don't do this. And it's totally safe for her to breastfeed and use Zoloft. And within 2 weeks of being on Zoloft, I felt like a different person. And I remember there was a moment where I was in the kitchen alone, as I always was, with my baby. And this song came on. Of course, I can't tell you the name of the song now. It was just, it was really like a nice album, like whatever. It was a beautiful song. And I picked up, I had him on like the kitchen table that you're not supposed to do, but it had like all these things around him. And usually I'm like cleaning and kind of just making sure he's okay. And but then the song came on and something just felt different inside of me, and I lifted him up. Oh, it was called Samuel. Okay, Samson, Ingrid Michaelson, and Samson. And so, and I lifted him up and we started dancing together. And I was like, oh, this is what they're talking about. Oh, okay, I like you. Like this is a nice guy. Like, you know, I finally felt that connection. It took me that long, but I finally felt that connection that people were talking about this motherhood.
And it's
love.
cruel that it sort of coincides with the first 3 months, because, you know, and for example, not like when you stop breastfeeding or something, because it's one of the hardest ones because of the sleep deprivation. You can barely see straight, even in the best of circumstances. I remember when I breastfed the twins for 7 months exclusively. And because, you know, they're twins, they wake up at different times. You can't put a 1-week-old or a 6-week-old or even 12-week-old baby on the same schedule as the other one. It's virtually impossible. And so it was like the feed and change and rock and sleep. And it was like literally 20 minutes later, you would repeat it. And we started hallucinating, like actual legit hallucinating about 6 weeks in. We would, the twins were in this double sleeper next to my bed here. And Mike would wake up and be like, the baby's in the bed. Or, you know, I would have similar kind of things. And we realized we actually we're kind of experiencing what they talk about with almost, you know, torture or sleep deprivation, like at the point where you're literally not able to function. So I can't imagine having that on top of the already difficult situation is so hard. So when did you start this group, Not Safe for Moms? I can't remember
Not Safe
how
for
long
Mom.
It's been now.
Not Safe for Mom group. I think I started in 2018, in August of 2018. It was, well, actually, that's when I told people, that's when I like sent it to people that were in my circle. But I had been like quietly building it a little bit before that, maybe over the winter, just kind of exploring it as a concept for myself.
And what's your favorite post that you guys have done? Do you have one that kind of has seared your mind? Like, I definitely have one, and I mean, you probably know what it is because I shared it, but like, is there one that stands out for you or particularly resonates with you?
Oh my gosh, I wish I had thought this through and picked a favorite or a favorite period of time. There have been some wonderful highlights just where the community has come together. I think the first time we ever talked about terminating after motherhood was one of the most moving conversations we ever had, because it was someone who, you know, had a beautiful child that she loved, and a husband who she loved, and a career that she loved, but she just really wasn't ready for this second child and was grappling with this decision and felt like a terrible person. And the community really rose up to support her with stories of their own, and positive, and, you know, I wouldn't say positive, negative, but stories of like, listen, I felt the same way as you, and I went ahead with the pregnancy, and I can never imagine any other outcome. It's my kid. I love my kid, and it was hard, but it was the right decision. And other people said, I made this choice, and I'm really glad I did. And it she just said it was like, you know, life-changing. I usually hear from people about how the support makes them feel. And that's the best part, to know that hearing from other women is so healing, because you're really reaching out in the dark, you know, you're not in a great place, and you're reaching out just to see if someone heard you, or if you're just shouting to the wind. And you don't want to know, you don't want to think you're shouting to the wind. And so the kind of
and often even your
outpouring,
close friends aren't experiencing what it is that you're experiencing, right? I mean, when I was thinking about when I found your account, it was definitely like 11 o'clock at night, way past my bedtime. I'd gone around the bend with some emotional tizzy, and I landed there, and it made me think back to when I lost the baby in between Charlie and the twins, which is a really complicated feeling for me, because the twins would not exist had that baby survived. So it's weird to kind of hold all of those things together, because I can't imagine the twins not being in my life. But I also like felt close to that baby. I was in the second trimester. It had to be surgically removed. It was not, you know, a typical miscarriage in that way. But it reminded me of when the day I had that surgery, which, let's just be honest, is the same procedure as an abortion. And I remember staring at the ceiling, and they had painted it sky blue with clouds. And I was just like laughing and crying out of anger and awfulness, because sky blue with clouds, like, are you fucking kidding me? Excuse me. And I cried my whole way through that procedure. And then my best friend came with me and took me home. And because I had wanted a woman to be there. And my husband understood that. And she took me home, and I found myself going to Instagram quite quickly after that and finding the 1 in 4 hashtag, which I didn't know existed before I had experienced that myself. And it was only until I found the conversations and stories of all these other women who I didn't know, I started to heal. And kind of face, it was a long process, like a 6-week process, but none of my family members had lost a baby before. There was no one to relate to and to talk to. So I think you're really filling a humongous need, because for better or for worse, we're just less likely to call our mom these days, or our, you know, our sister, than we are to go to Google, whether it's about feeding advice or how to start solids, or, you know, what to do in marital stress or things like that. So I'm just so in awe of what you developed, Alexis. So I know I'm going a little bit over time here, so I just have a couple more questions for you, and then I'll let you go on with your night. But so well, I want to end, I'll give you a little time to think about this one, because I want to end on advice you have for new moms. So a lot of our followers at Solid Starts, and I'll post this to our IGTV so others can watch it later, but they're really new moms, and they're, you know, 0 to 6 month old babies, basically. They're in it. They're really in it. And I'm curious as to what advice sort of globally you might have for them, and that's what I'd like to end on. But before we get there, I want to steal a question from an interview that I had to do a few weeks ago, which was like, what would be your billboard sign if you had one? I love that question. Mine was, just like, give me a moment to think, mine was get out of the way, because I was talking about trusting your baby to eat, trusting them to literally take the lead, and how sometimes our well-intentioned hovering efforts and feeding efforts can actually get in the way of developing healthy, happy eaters. So my billboard is get out of the way. But what would your billboard be right now?
I mean, it's like so cheesy, but it would be like, you're safe here.
Mm, I like that. That's how I felt when I landed on your page. A little bit nervous, but also safe.
You can really say anything and you're safe here. That's the
Yeah,
goal of what I'm
I
trying
love
to
it.
create. Yeah. But that's a
I
good,
love
your
it.
billboard's really
Okay.
good. The
Um,
advice,
okay. Give us
the
your best
advice. Okay.
advice for these moms who are in the
Yeah.
trenches right now. They're sleep deprived. They've probably just mastered breastfeeding and now they're like, wait, now I've got to feed solids on top of this.
Yeah.
They're in the thick of it. What would be your advice for getting through this
I think th
period?
three things. Um, the first thing you have to do is find friends. You have to
Mm,
find I mean, I guess your village. You really have to find communities. It's right now we have online, but there's so many different places to find them. Um, it's really important that you get to know other mothers who are in the same stage of motherhood as you are, because like even like 3 months later, you hear that?
yeah.
That's my
Dishes?
martini. No, it's my martini. I'm getting like cocktail a little bit late. Um,
It's good now.
but even if it's 3 months later, real life, if it's 3 months later, like that mom is now in the thick of something so different that she can't even like tell you what she
Yeah.
did 3 months ago. So it's great to have like
Yes.
a mom group that's the same month or so of your baby, that you could just be like, okay, so this weird regression is happening right now. What do I do? And you can really
Yeah.
get a lot of great advice and connection in that. Um, if we weren't in a pandemic, I'd also say to get that friend that you can just like sit on their couch and do nothing with, but like
Mm,
nurse, take a nap. Thank you.
mhm.
Um, Take a nap, watch their baby while they go to the bathroom or shower, just to have like that red tent situation
Yeah.
where, I mean, this may not be even like your best friend forever or someone you knew before, but like this is your
Yeah.
best friend right now. This is your lifeline. Like
Yeah.
that person is so important in your life. And if you can find that when we're all allowed to be in each other's houses again, um, I think
Yeah.
that's really, really great. My second piece of advice is to not like maybe scan the books if you really must. But my grandmother told me like put down the book, pick up the baby. I was like, you're crazy. It's not like that anymore. We have to be in all these books. But like really don't read the books. The books really made me crazy. They made me
Yeah.
so obsessed because I wanted to do everything by the book. And if I could do it all over again,
Yeah.
I would just be with my baby and just be like, you
Hmm.
seem really unhappy right now. There's probably three things that are
Yeah.
wrong with you. You know,
Completely.
it's not that
I
complicated.
have to respond to that because I want to share with you. I was speaking with an advisor of ours and a very influential, phenomenal woman who's just made her such a success of her life and her giving and philanthropy. And she said, uh, for whatever reason, we still need validation.
Mm-hmm.
And, for Solid Start seems to be really meeting that need from an intuitive eating perspective, or, that's
Mm-hmm.
not really the right term for what we're doing, but there are so many moms who write in and say, I think I should do it this way. Is that right? And I'm like, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you could also do it this way. Like there actually is no wrong. There are certain ways, that will bring up issues later, and some downsides and upsides. But largely, it's largely the intuition of a mother is really good,
It's really good.
really, really good. So
Time and
I
time
love that.
again.
Well, I think, oh,
And I love what
I'm
what
glad.
you're doing is all about intuition too. And it's like the intuition of the baby, the intuition of the mother. It's like,
Yeah,
here, try this. Does that work?
yeah,
No? Try this. And
yeah,
I think that principle is just it's such a relief because you're not put into a box, and you're not put into a
Yeah.
book, and you're not put
One of
into a
our feeding
philosophy.
therapists likes to say that baby-led weaning is for the lazy moms, although I don't think there is such a thing as a lazy mom,
No.
so we need to work on the messaging. But you know, it's not, there's no blender involved, there's no like complicated recipes. You know,
Great
generally you can
idea.
pretty much hand over what you're eating with your baby for the most part, which is it was just kind of a nice evolution in our motherhood. I mean, I definitely, like when you were talking about the books and all of that, I was that first mom. I read all the books. I like kept to the exact sleep schedule and everything had to be exactly this way. And I was like blending the kale purees and like he's gonna eat all these green things and go crazy. And now he eats nothing because I was so controlling about it that I completely, you know, made it an issue when it may have not been an issue if I had just gotten out of the way.
Or he may eat nothing because that's just who he is right now.
And that
So
is also
it
true.
may not be
That
you.
is also true. That is also
Yeah.
true. There's certain personalities, certain kiddos that are just wired for that, for sure.
Hmm. Hmm.
But it is, maybe this is a good theme to end on because we do seem to be back to that 1950s question, have things, you know, gotten any better in motherhood, or is it just a different form of the same? I have to say that living in the age of total motherhood, I don't know if it's the New York Times or someone kind of coined this age as the mothers were like the total motherhood mothers, right? We're the everything moms.
Hmm.
We
Hmm.
we do the home cooking. We have the full-time job. We may even be the breadwinner.
Hmm.
And you know, boom, 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 right? And it does. The pandemic has completely like just boom, brought that up so
Hmm.
high and so heavy for
Hmm.
me because it is completely unsustainable. Like
Oh
I
yeah.
actually can't anymore. And I
The
found
burnout is
myself,
real.
it's so real. And I found myself saying this in 2 days ago, and I was thinking about our live that we were going to do. And I literally just said out loud, like, I can't do this anymore.
Hmm.
I just can't. And I don't even know what this is, but I just can't do this, like all of this anymore. And I
Yeah.
have the supportive husband and I have a privilege of choice and, you know, some financial means. And it's like, and I still can't do this anymore. My God, what is the single mom doing right now? So
Hmm.
thank you for everything that you're doing. You're really providing a wonderful community for everyone who's just joining us. This is Alexis from Not Safe for Moms group. Go over there, be prepared for some bold conversations that are happening over there. Bold, honest, like you should really own what is it, honest mommin and raw motherhood hashtags. Like that should
Yeah,
just be
you're
yours.
right.
No one else should be allowed to use that but you guys because you're
Oh,
nailing it.
thank you.
Alexis, thank you for your time and generosity and for creating such a safe space for all the things that moms want to say but don't feel like they can say out loud. It's really brilliant what you've done.
Well, it's been a joy to be with you tonight. I mean, I had nothing left inside of me, and then you just like brought out so much energy and like a positive feeling, and really lifted me up. So thank you, and it's really great to be a part of your community and getting to know more about what you guys do over the course of, you know, since we've been talking together. And I just think that you're great, and what the opportunities and the choices that you're offering women through what you do is so important because, like we were saying, it really sucks to be confined in a box. And I think you've
Yeah,
given women a real feeling of choice and flexibility.
I hope so. I hope so. We're building the thing I felt I needed when I was struggling. Alexis, have a wonderful night. Thanks everyone for joining. We'll save this to our IGTV and you can watch it later again if you like. And have a good night, Alexis. It was really a pleasure.
Thank you. Cheers.
Oh,
Bye.
yes. Cheers. You have a much nicer, this is like a plastic. Like my kids can't knock it over and break it. You've got the right thing going on. Cheers,
I tried.
Alexis.
Bye.
I love it. Have a good night, everybody.